All right, welcome to another episode of Chasing Rings, fellas. It's finally springtime up in this piece. even
Yeah,
even though you've been getting the 90-degree extreme temperatures before spring
Oh
came.
yeah, most definitely. Even though it's a
Yeah.
little cooler today, but yeah.
Yeah, even though spring has been officially here for a minute now, we finally got some spring-like temperatures in the northeast part of the country, so we're all happy. A little bit more vitamin D in our systems. But anyways, welcome to another episode of Chasing Rings. We're gonna jump right into it like we always do, with our wait, what? All right, who's got something good for me today? I know somebody's got something real good for me today. Big dude, let's do it, man.
all right. We are doing the AFC North tonight. So, with the Cincinnati Bengals that had a horrendous year on defense, I have something for you. Did you know in this Super Bowl era, the Cincinnati Bengals in 2025 broke a record, and the record was they're the only defense to give up 500 plus yards, 38 plus points, and 0 turnovers in 2 consecutive games.
Wait, what? My wait, what for today is I had a few prepared because we're starting to tread on each other's territory lately. So I'm like, let me make sure I have a few in the chamber in case mine gets cannibalized. So I think I'm going to go with 4 future Hall of Famers were drafted in a single draft by the Pittsburgh Steelers in 1974. Wait, what?
Oh,
Wow.
Those Hall of Famers, Lynn Swann, John Stallworth, Jack Lambert, and Mike Webster. And I got something to add to that. They had an undrafted free agent, Donnie Shell, who also joined them in the Hall of Fame. So that's 5 Hall of Famers out of a single offseason.
incredible.
So I do have one that I actually thought was pretty interesting. And I
Okay.
didn't even realize this. So Paul Brown, I never knew this. Paul Brown is the Cleveland Browns namesake and first coach. Did y'all know that?
hmm
Yes.
I never knew that. Fired by Art Modell and then went and founded the Bengals.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you were going to say something else. And
Yeah,
correct me if I'm
I
wrong
never
on
knew
this.
that. But
I believe that he started both the Browns and the Bengals.
He did.
yeah,
Wait,
he was the
what?
Browns. He was the first coach of the Browns. Then Art Modell fired him. Then he went and created the Bengals, and they played at Paul Brown Stadium in Cincinnati, which the Browns fans didn't like.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're going to get into our news for the day. And we are going to jump right in and talk about some March Madness, man. What a weekend. I don't know if you guys caught all the games, but we're down to our final 4 on both the women's and the men's tournaments. And the women, just as we expected, all of the 1 seeds. South Carolina will play Connecticut on Friday, I believe. Texas and UCLA, I think, will be. I don't know which game is first. I was going to say Texas UCLA would be the nightcap, but I don't know who's playing when. Both of those games are Friday night for the Final 4. And then the men, of course, Saturday evening, UConn against Illinois and Michigan against Arizona. And we will do a little bit of a dive into what we think will happen in terms of our predictions on our next episode. But we got to spend a few moments talking about the ending of that UConn Duke game. That was one of those days where I just felt blessed to be a sports fan and to have witnessed all of the magical moments that I've seen in sports. But I don't know if you both got to check it out. I know you've seen the highlights minimally, but what are your thoughts on how Duke essentially just gave UConn a free pass to the Final 4? I mean, they dominated the game.
Well, first of all, anybody that's up by 19 that's a number 1 seed, I just didn't see. I knew that they'd make some kind of run, but it would be a valiant one. And it sounded like even the commentators were going into the valiant dialogue. Yeah, but boy, they just didn't give up, and they were getting jobbed on some of those calls too, man.
Oh my God. That
This
one
is David
charge,
Gray.
that one
Yeah.
obvious charge on Boozer just ran over Mullins, and I thought
Oh,
Hurley was going to get tossed, to be quite honest. I don't think I
right,
could have
because he
maintained my
started laughing
cool.
and everything was followed by his reaction. And just to see them come back and then to see them get ready to put it away. And then you look at these tremendous players, especially the Boozer twins, they're 18 years old. Sometimes 18-year-olds don't do the simplest thing. It's not like it was anybody's fault, because I don't think that they should have let them back in it. And once they said that one stat about the regional final with a number 1 seed that had a 15-point lead,
Yep.
they were 134-0. I said, why did he say that?
Yep. I said, I'm definitely not turning now because something's about to happen.
Right. And I didn't really, because me and my wife were watching it too. And she said, well, anything can happen. I'm like, come on. I don't think there's quite enough. I don't think. But it came all the way down there. The game probably should have been over. I mean, in another circumstance, it could have been. But all young Boozer had to do was hold on to the ball. That's all he had to do.
Yeah, so let's talk about those last 10 to 20 seconds, let's say. But obviously that last 10 seconds was the crucial play. First of all, the UConn kid steps up, misses the first free throw, and I'm thinking they are surely done. Right? Hits the second one. I'm still thinking, valiant effort, like you said. Nice try. 10 seconds, surely John Shire's letting them know situationally what needs to be done. Even myself watching at home, I forgot that they had another timeout, which made it even worse afterwards, that they could have called the timeout. But they didn't really see themselves in a jam. If you really think about how that play unfolded, no one was stopped at any one point that really would have precipitated, I need to call a timeout. He got the ball in bounds, okay. Cam got it back to the inbounder, okay. But that last 10 seconds, man, the inbounder was a 52% free throw shooter. And typically the inbounder gets the ball back pretty easily, like he did. And he got rid of that thing like it was the hottest potato you've ever seen. Gee, what's your take on that last 10 seconds? What could Duke have done differently to avoid that ending?
One or two things happened. You can say it was a bad coaching call. You can easily argue that. Why would you have a freshman in there that could possibly be in that position at that particular time? But at the same time, he was actually playing pretty well, and he was playing pretty smart ball up to that point. So you probably just didn't think he would kind of have a mental lapse right there. So to me, I tend to lean toward the latter, that it was a mental lapse. I mean, he's a Boozer. This dude knows basketball inside and out. So it was just a mental lapse. And I'm not going to say it's because he's a freshman or it's because it's the first time he's been in that situation. We've seen mental lapses. You remember Fab Five calling the timeout, and I'm like, who was it?
Chris Webber.
Yeah, and he's a vet in college ball by that point.
I want to bring this up because the focus is on Caden Boozer, okay?
Mm-hmm.
But if you're watching that was shaky from the jump.
Yeah.
Did you see where Cam caught the ball and kind of fumbled it a little bit? Yeah. They had a little soft trap on him, but he easily got it back to the inbounder. And like I said, the inbounder almost did a tap to Caden, like he wanted no part of it, right? And I just want to play devil's advocate here. And you guys, I think I mentioned on the last couple episodes that I became a big Caden Boozer fan. The way he came in and subbed for their guard that got hurt towards the end of the year. I didn't know that he was this good. But I think he played some killer ball down the stretch. If you look at that play again, it was a pretty good / heads up defensive play. Because if you look at it, they didn't, and normally you would try to foul the person with the ball. They didn't lunge at him to foul him. They were trying to play defense on him. And if you look at it, both of them jumped on the pass. And I don't think I've ever seen that before in that situation where the guys weren't just on the ground lunging at the foul. The fact that they were able to tip that ball, yeah, I see it where I think Caden panicked. There's no doubt about that. But that was still a hell of a defensive play
No, it's
because
tremendous.
there's two guys behind them. If he gets that over their heads, it's over.
Mm-hmm.
So, certainly we can't be inside any of these kids' heads. We don't know what the coaches said or didn't say, but I thought that was a heck of a play. I think it was a combination of Duke panicking, and I'm not just going to say Caden panicking because Cam fumbled it a little bit, and certainly the inbounder wanted no parts of it. But I think it's a combo of Duke panicking and Connecticut making a pretty heads-up defensive play, personally, after I thought about it, after my 50th time watching it. What do you think, big dude? You have anything else that, did you see it from a different lens, or what was your thoughts on it?
No, I mean, that's the first I thought about it, because they did, I guess, whatever happened, it must have been good defense because they don't teach it anymore. I mean, what all of us that I remember were taught in fourth grade is the number one cardinal rule, and people used to argue that you don't break, is leave your feet on a pass. So if he doesn't leave his feet on a pass, when you leave your feet on a pass, you may get it over somebody, but if you're playing it and you let, especially you're not as tall. Now, of course, I think we talked about this before, with Cam at 6'9", probably would have been okay making that pass.
Mm-hmm.
But it still was that it was a combination of good defense, and I think the coaches in general, just the way the culture is, they don't talk about that particular fundamental anymore. And maybe you're driving to the basket, but I think you mentioned something too. If you're saying that there was somebody didn't want any part of the ball, any Duke team that I know of, there's 5 starters that all of them wanted the ball and all of them wanted to be in the situation. That's what I couldn't figure out. They were playing like defensively, but they had the ball. But all of them should feel like they can at least go to the foul line to get at least one shot. So he's like, nah, and maybe the coach yelled, give it to Caden, give it to Caden. He might have, but I just think it was a combination of all those particular things. Like you said, great year by the Boozer brothers. I take nothing, and still you got to figure out who is going to make that type of shot. I mean, that was.
And that's the other part of it, right? So what? Okay, so they nutted up a little bit. You're still like, okay, he's not going to hit this shot.
Yeah, you can't foul him because you don't need to foul him. That was one of them Jerry West shots. You know what I mean? It was in West Virginia. It's like, wait a minute, man. So I would probably bet on him not making that shot if I was a defensive player, because I'm not going to foul him and give him 3 free throws. So you can't. Gosh, all that happened, and the dude knocked it down the bottom.
Did you guys watch it live, or did you see the replay?
I saw it live.
Did you think it was going in? Because it looked good to me immediately, Steph.
Yeah, it looked too good. I said, there's no way.
I didn't think it was going to go.
It looked good to me as soon as it left. I was like, first of all, he got that clean look. When Caravan gave it up, I thought, he's going to run out of time. But he had a clean look at that. If the Duke defender just steps up one more step, even, there's so many small things that could have changed the outcome of that game that I'm kind of sitting here left with, man, if he had done this or if he had done that, it looked good, man. But that boy had ice water in his vein. Connecticut was dead to rights. There's no other way to look at it. They were dead to rights.
Sometimes it's better to be lucky than good.
You got that right.
That was one of those. But here's the thing: Duke let them back in the game, so they had to. I mean, I just went back and watched the highlights. But I mean, once that momentum changed, it seems it was like it didn't surprise me.
But it was weird though, G, because you say the momentum changed, but it never really did change.
So how do you go lead like that?
Because look, and big dude, jump in. I felt like Duke would they'd be within 9, and then they played 3 more minutes where they couldn't get past that, and Duke would take it back to double figures. Now we're down to, I think it was 4 or 5 minutes, and Duke's up 8 with the ball, and you're thinking, this is probably going to be a wrap. And it seemed like Connecticut never really could get over the hump until there was like a minute something left. And even then, you didn't feel the momentum because they were still behind.
They started chipping away before a minute and something left.
I didn't say they weren't chipping away at it, G. I said that they never could get over a certain point. They kept getting to 7, and then it would go back to 9, or it would go to 6, and it would go back to 8. And it really wasn't until that last minute and something that they got within a 2-possession game. It stayed a 3-possession game.
Yeah, that's fair.
Almost right up until the end, and there was no point where you felt like Duke was going to lose. I mean, there was no point that I really felt Duke was going to lose until I saw that ball get tipped, and I was like, oh, ish.
Right.
That is fair.
You know, so that's what I mean. Not that they chipped that lead, because you're saying if we can get it to 10 by this point, if we could get it to, but man, Duke kept kicking that ball to Cam. Whenever they needed a basket, Cam gave them a basket.
Oh yeah.
And they did make some mistakes on offense, but I think a lot of that was predicated on UConn turned up the defense, and they got some turnovers when they needed it. And they were making some shots out of their mind. If you remember when we were picking the brackets, my one concern with UConn is scoring droughts. And that's what got them into this trouble to begin with. And then towards the end, they got whatever they wanted to. They went down low to the big man. He was either making the basket or he was making the right pass for an easy basket. And it just became so easy. Something that was so hard for them for probably 35 minutes was all of a sudden easy. And it was the weirdest game. It's probably one of the weirdest games I've ever watched, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah, I can't remember when I've seen a game like that, and that's where I'm at too. I just thought that Duke had done just enough. I said, you know what? I'm glad Connecticut didn't give up. I got a lot of respect for them.
Yeah.
I kept saying that to them.
Yep. That's how you feel. That's how you were feeling at the end. Like I remember saying, I was like, man, great effort by Connecticut, man. Yeah. Great effort. Much respect. Little did we know. Joke's on us, man.
Well, that just blew my bracket completely up.
Oh
yeah, all I have left is Arizona, and like I said, I don't really want them to win. I'd rather my bracket get completely blown at this point. And Big Dude, you have Michigan, right? So one of us will be left standing Saturday night, and that'll be it.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, we'll get into a little bit more of this in our predictions for the Final Four, both the men and the women. Let's jump into our analysis of the AFC North, and we are going to start with those Baltimore Ravens. High expectations and just seem to disappoint year after year. So 8 and 9, again, another one of those divisions where nobody, really had an outstanding record, but 8 and 9, second place. They were playing for the division on the last game of the season, that Sunday night game, where their kicker basically missed a field goal and cost them a playoff bid. Surely the way their season went, I don't think it would have ended any differently than the Steelers' season ended against Houston the following week. So they probably just saved themselves a week of heartache, to be quite honest with you. But, it's the same story for Baltimore, always underachieving. Lamar is starting to get banged up a little bit more, so he was hurt a lot this year. But it's crazy because as much as that limited their offense, Derrick Henry still was within 27 yards of a rushing title. So go figure, right? Had a down year where your quarterback wasn't available, but Derrick Henry still almost wins a rushing title. But the bigger issue, like a lot of teams this year, is defense, man. And when we talked about all of the other teams and divisions thus far, it seems like defense in the league is really down. And their defense failed them in some crucial times as well. So obviously Baltimore had a major shakeup. John Harbaugh, their longtime coach, was let go. He's now the Giants coach. And that was a bold move for Baltimore to move on from someone who had been there for so long. I think he might have believe him and Tomlin probably were the longest tenured coaches, I think, during this past season. So, that was a big move for a franchise where that's all they had known, a coach who had brought them a Super Bowl championship. So that was a big risk for them to move on and maybe not try to fill in the gaps in the offseason. So anyways, we fast forward. They bring in Jesse Minter from the Chargers, and we'll see if he can restore the Ravens to their rightful place, at least in their eyes or their fans' eyes, as an elite AFC team. So storylines to watch for the Ravens. Do we find out that it was systemic, or it was a result of a team that maybe got too comfortable with their reputation and, kind of caught up with them? So a few key things about the Ravens. Offensively, they weren't terrible. 27th in passing was probably their lowest offensive rating. Defensively, they were not good. This was not a typical Ravens team. Total, they were 18th in total defense, 29th against the pass. They were pretty good against the run. They were 10th against the run, but 28th in sacks. And we know if you think about Baltimore Ravens football, they get to the quarterback, they pressure the quarterback. So to be almost last in sacks at the bottom of the league, that tells you a little bit about what their season was. They had some key acquisitions this year. They got Trey Hendrickson from Cincinnati. They got a safety from New England, Jalen Hawkins. And they brought in some linemen to strengthen their interior, both the guard and center positions. But they also lost their center, Tyler Linderbaum, which was a big loss to lose an all-pro center. They lost Isaiah Likely and a couple of other defensive players in free agency. So the Ravens, they have pick number 14, which seems weird. When you think of the Ravens, you expect them to be picking at the bottom of the draft because they've been so good the last few years. But they have the 14th pick in the draft. They're pretty good in cap space, so they can make up some of this deficit in their personnel during this offseason if they move smartly. So they have over $30 million in cap space. Their biggest needs being edge rusher, defensive line, offensive line, safety, and wide receiver. Big dude, what do you have going on with the Ravens in this first round of the draft?
Well, 14 is a tough pick because they need a lot of key things. You lose your center, somebody as good as that. They weren't going to be able to pay him, but they lost him. Are they going to gamble on a rookie center? And when can you get him, or do you make a center out of somebody? And then, of course, for Lamar Jackson, who are the people that you want to bring in that's going to help change the team? He's going to need somebody. Whoever's out there, he's going to need someone, because they play kind of a grinding style offense. The Ravens do, and they take chances and they pick up and go. I would say since they got, and I think the one lineman you were talking about was John Simpson, which was a great pickup. I think this is a point where you either are going to have to go with someone. I think this will be a chance. I think that and Lamar Jackson loves his tight ends. I think if Kenyon Sadiq is there, you might have to go with him. Only because, again, I think what's starting to happen, I think on a lot of the draft analysis that I'm running across, they keep saying they're not too sure about him, about his route running, about how much he blocked. And all of a sudden now everybody's talking about his 6 catches that he dropped. But I think that with the offense and what they need to do to stretch the field to get those other folks there, this guy can do both. I think in the first round, that'll be the thing to look at. But if they're not too sure about how their line is, then they need to go with Vega Ione, who did not give up any sacks last year and can help solidify what's going on with Linderbaum and Foot. And it'll be interesting to see what Ione's career is going to be, whether he'll stay at guard or whether he'll also double at center, because that'll be probably some of the quickest ways, unless he goes with somebody like the Cardinals or someone like that had a rough year up front. And we'll get to the other teams later. I think that's a good place to look at. Then you have a chance to also pair, I think, one other person with Hendrickson or Trey Hendrickson or get involved with the rotation with him. And I'm not sure if Ruben Bain will be there. I have a feeling that Ruben Bain may drop out of the top 10. if he drops out of the top 10 and he's there, it's worth considering him as well. And of course, I don't think he's going to be there at pick 45. So this first pick, I think, 8 and 9 last year, I do agree with you, Guru, that I think they got a little too comfortable, a little too long in the tooth last year because everything that happened and they seemed to be shocked. They seemed to be a way they could always figure it out. That's the way Baltimore always has been, especially the last 7 or 8 years or so. They always get to the playoffs and do some other things. But I think some of the later round in the middle rounds, they have some good draft capital. It would not be above me to look at that draft capital they have, which is pretty funky. Maybe look at a trade like in rounds 4 and 5 to move up to get a good receiver from somewhere else that's left after all those different receivers shake out, and maybe an interior lineman. There's an interior lineman by the name of Landon Robinson who had a top 30 visit with them, 21-year-old guy. Most of the other guys, and I think I'll stop here. I think the edge, and again, looking at seeing at number 45, if denied Dennis Sutton is there, I think you need to consider taking him at 45. And all the rest of them, look at trades and look at where else I think the secondary is good. We know the secondary has the best pairings around right now. But I think that's what you're looking at Baltimore to find out. That 14th pick, I say Ione if you can. Ione's not there, then you go with a wideout.
Yeah, we are pretty much in total agreement, big dude, on that. I have them drafting Vega as well with that 14th selection. He should be there. I have them, if for some reason he's not going edge as you do. I think Falk and who's my other guy? I think Falk and Bailey will probably be gone. But I agree with you. I think Reuben Bain should be available for them. His draft value is starting to plummet a little bit. So I don't have a whole lot more to add, pretty much right in alignment with what you're predicting for them.
So Baltimore, I was looking at my favorite site for that's been tracking free agency, and they have been on a buying spree. And so from the look of it, they went out and they got their edge, their D linemen, offensive line. Looks like they went out and got those people. And from the amounts that they're paying them, these are some names I'm familiar with, some I'm not. So I think they did a lot of that interior work in free agency. And so they have some vets coming in. And so that's leaving the door open in my world is to focus on wide receiver, running back, and tight end. And I would probably go in that particular order if I were on Baltimore, because they need the targets. They need the targets. And so I'm thinking that here's my favorite wide receiver right now in the whole draft, and I definitely think he'll probably be there. I don't think anybody's going to go for Chris Brazil before then, but I think that is and no hate to Carnell Tate. I'm a Buckeye homer, but it's just something about him, man, that just really catches my eye. Maybe it's his size and his agility. Maybe that's what it is. He's very fluid. If y'all watch some of his film, I'm like, dude, it's silky, man. I just think that he's underrated as a fifth rank. So he could probably drop to around this mid-first round and maybe a good pickup for Baltimore.
Yeah, I like Bradshaw a lot too. He's definitely from what I'm hearing, his value is going up, but I like him too, and I'll be mentioning him as we progress through this division. Would not be a bad pickup. I had thought about wide receiver for the Ravens, but for me, them being 27th in passing and losing Tyler Lindenbaugh. I felt like they needed to shore up that offensive line. That was my thinking there. But going wide receiver, they do need a wide receiver bad. We know they need weapons other than Henry, so that wouldn't be a bad pick either. Baltimore is almost teetering that line of best available. I mean, they don't have a terrible roster, but they have some key things that they need to fill in those skill positions. Even big dude bringing up Kenyon Sadiq, I could totally be on board with them drafting a wide receiver, tight end like Sadiq, and I'd have no problem with it. And I don't think that they would be missing out on anything by doing that. So they have a few opportunities here, and that 14th pick is not a bad place to be if you're a franchise like Baltimore that's used to drafting towards the end of the round.
So should Baltimore trade to get more bites at the apple in the second round?
I wouldn't. What do you think, big dude? I think they should stay put.
I think they should stay put, but still at the same time be open. It's got to be almost something that is an immediate need. I mean, if something came up, and of course, if it had to do with a trade for an established veteran, I would listen. You know, especially if it was a center from somewhere else and something different came up, I would look at that. I'm not so sure I would trade up to get another draft pick from that, but the trade capital they have gives them some options. I just think right now, actually, to tell you the truth, Baltimore does not need much. You know,
Right.
if they got another running back, you know, because Derrick Henry is 31 years old, well, you know, going on 32, you need another smash mouth person, but you could still get that in those middle rounds.
All right, on to the Bengals then. The Bungles.
All right, Berman.
You would think that, you know, a team with Joe Burrow at quarterback would mean division titles and deep playoff runs year after year, similar to Baltimore, I suppose, but it's been the same mix for them. You know, explosive offense, even though Burrow's been hurt the last few seasons, the offense has still been explosive, especially upon his return, but their defense cannot stop anybody. And it's that simple. The defense has cost them year after year. You know, even though Burrow missed 9 games, when he came back, he, Chase, and Higgins were clicking like he hadn't missed a beat. And let's not ignore the job that Joe Flacco did. You know, for them, he was putting up numbers, and for a time there, I thought that he might get them to the playoffs. I was thinking let Burrow really heal up and let Joe keep running it, you know. But anyways, you know, he came back. They still did well, but the defense just couldn't stop anyone. I think the game against Buffalo was almost a perfect indication of what that team is. They had a healthy lead. Buffalo couldn't even stop them. And then at the fourth quarter, defense fell apart. So obviously, there were a couple of unfortunate turnovers, kind of a little bit of luck there, I'll actually say. You don't really see a team self-destruct like that quickly. That hadn't been turning the ball over all day. But nonetheless, the defense couldn't stop Buffalo when it counted the most, as what happens to Cincinnati in most games. There was some talk early in the offseason, end of the regular season, about whether Cincinnati should move off of Burrow, which is ridiculous. No, he's contracted through the 2029 season, so I'm imagining he'll stick that out there unless he initiates something. So as long as he's there, the ceiling's always going to be high for Cincinnati. They're always going to have a shot. But they need to make some changes on defense, as we know. Losing Trey Hendrickson did not help them any, but we knew that probably was going to be inevitable with the contract disputes that have happened over the last couple of years with him. It was just a matter of time before he was going to be out of Cincinnati. So, storyline for the Bengals, are they going to open up that wallet and spend some money and get what they need for what's been an undermanned defense for the last few years? They're pretty good in cap space. They're about middle of the pack. They have $23.5 million. You know, they obviously need defense. Their offense still fared pretty well, consistent to what they usually do. They ranked really low in the rushing attack, which is a little bit surprising. But other than that, they were 6th in passing, middle of the pack in total offense. They did well there, but their defense was atrocious. 30th total defense, 26th against the pass, 29th against the run, 26th least sacks, just nothing well on defense. They did pick up some key acquisitions in free agency. They got Boya Mafe, the edge. They got Brian Cook, the safety, and Jonathan Allen, defensive tackle, coming over from Minnesota after a year there, after being in Washington prior. And certainly losing Hendrickson is their biggest loss. They lost Logan Wilson to retirement. Geno Stone, one of the tough, rugged safeties that they had, went on to Buffalo, and they lost defensive end Joseph Fasai. So they need defensive players, but they also lost some key defensive players. In fact, all of their key losses were defensive players. So for a team that already was not that good on defense, you lost some of your better defensive players. So, where do we go from here? They have the 10th pick in the draft. I mentioned they have decent cap space, not tremendous, but decent. And they need edge, an offensive lineman, a cornerback, a D lineman, and a safety. And certainly, again, the focus for them is pretty known for all of us that they need defense bad. Big dude, what do you have for the Cincinnati Bengals?
I gave that defensive stat to talk about the defense, although some of the research are also mentioned, didn't mention the offensive line is known to be one of the worst, even though the team itself didn't do that bad offensively. So, but I think that just how the fact that they can't stop anybody, I think they have to come up with something dynamic. I think right on it, you need somebody that's a baller that, again, thinks a lot of himself, thinks he can help somebody right away. I think I would go number 10 with Mansour Delane from LSU. It's a bit of a risk because I don't know if Caleb Downs is going to be there. If for some reason Caleb Downs is going to be there, I'd obviously go with him. I'm not sure what the issue is with Caleb Downs, because as much as people say that he's the best player in the draft, they don't have him only because of people draft by need. He's not there. That's why he's not going to get picked 1, 2, or 3, because they have to go by their need. And I think that Mansour Delane is probably one of the best things they can do in terms of having someone that can cover. And of course, you have the 41st pick. I would look at Anthony Hill on that next pick, the linebacker from Texas, and Sutton again. Because I think whoever they get, for Hill and for Sutton, because I know Hill's another person, even though it says linebacker. Much of the research I talked about Hill is they can make him on the edge. Now they have their linebackers. The question is Cincinnati going to trust Hill to be their green dot linebacker, because they're going to need somebody that's going to really run the defense. Nobody really has been identified as anyone, that establishes what happens out there. But I think Hill is versatile. And I think Sutton is worth looking at beyond that if he's in there between the second and third round. They've got to get to the quarterback. As you said, Guru, losing Hendrickson was also big, and it didn't help them. And they also lost Noah Fant last year. So they probably, in I would say the middle rounds, would need to look at a decent tight end as well. And somebody else that's a little bit different, not your typical one. And I don't know whether they'll be running 12 personnel or not. But they have their wideouts. For a team that was 6-11, they probably have this wasn't in any of the different weight was, but they probably had like 5 All-Pros on a 6-11 team, and you don't see that much. So they have on offense, for their skill players and all, they don't really need much. You got T. Higgins and all those other folks, and like you said, you have Joe Burrow back, and I think definitely someone to complement Boye Mafe on the other side. I think you can still get that in the middle rounds, but Mansour Delane, I think at corner, looking at this spry corner that's it's going to give them some energy, because it just seems like Cincinnati's missing energy. And I think we need somebody that can play, gives them energy, and gives them a chance to compete in those games, especially where they gave up 38 plus points, especially against the Jets. It just didn't make a whole lot of sense. You need a corner and you need a certain attitude in the secondary, which it seems like they lack. So that's what I have on Cincinnati.
Man, let me tell you, I'm in free agency. They look like they've actually been doing quite a bit on the defense and on the line. So I think they plugged a lot of those holes. Now I don't know how deep they are at those positions, but in terms of just plugging holes, I think they did a really good job. And so they may want to focus on running back and wide receiver in the draft. Where they're situated, I mean, it's possible they can actually get one of the top running backs, but the wide receivers are kind of deep enough that I think they do well. So if Kaytron Allen from Penn State or Seth McGowan from Kentucky, if either one of them are available, I would snap one of those two up. I don't think Love is going to be available, but one of those two, and let me tell you why, because they're big and they can hammer. And you're talking about Cleveland's defense, you're talking about Baltimore's defense. You need some solid downhill smash mouth backs who can also catch. And so I like those two, particularly Allen. I
agree with you, G. I mean, Allen's a smash mouth runner. He got most of the carries last year. You're talking about somebody that's a 4-year starter, that has multiple skills as well. I would also add on to your part, either if you can't get him, then you try for Singleton, and you almost get the same
like
thing.
Singleton, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. Some of the research on him, it depends on which Singleton shows up. So, but yeah, just thinking about the AFC North and the defenses, man, I'm just like, you have to make them think, them being the defense. You have to make them think twice about tackling, and then that's going to help open up the passing game, which is why I have wide receiver as second. And I hear your point, big dude. They definitely need help at the safety. I mean, they did go out and get a vet, but you need a couple of them. You need a couple of those safeties back there. Sometimes you might run two safeties. Sometimes you might have a third one on there, but you need that. But running back and wide receiver, I can see them focusing on that. And wide receivers is pretty deep when I go back and look at who's going to be available and where they're situated. They can also run into some really good receivers as well. So if I were them with that pick, I'm focusing on running back for the first round. If not, if my running backs are gone, then wide receiver.
I like what both of you have said thus far, but I'm going a different path. I do appreciate what both of you are saying, though, because they can't go wrong really with what either of you said. And G, especially their rushing attack. I mean, they were 29th in rushing. And I honestly couldn't even tell you who their starting running back is.
Exactly.
So and I love the spin on a big back. I think we're all in agreement that we like the big running backs. We like the big wide receivers. I like the little eeny meeny cats. They're cool, and I appreciate it. It's toughness and all of that. But I want a big Derrick Henry type of cat running that rock, man. And I want a big
that's the way the league is right now. If you think
exactly. I want a big AJ Brown bodying these DBs out. Can't get to the ball. So we're all in agreement on size in those positions. Right. But Cincinnati's defense is so bad, man. In losing Trey Hendrickson, I can't skip over Edge at the 10th pick. Right. And there should be somebody there for him. They should, again, like I said earlier about Baltimore, they should have their choice of Falk, Bailey, or Bain. even though Baines, and I meant to say this when we discussed Baltimore, even though Baines' value is dropping, I'm a believer. I just think
Oh, me
that
too.
he's a
Me
baller.
too.
I just think he's a baller, and if I need him and he's there, if I don't care where I'm picking. If I need that, I'm picking him. I'm not listening to the whatever's
Agreed.
happening with the media,
Agreed.
So,
Agreed.
so that's my take on Cincinnati, and I definitely agree with you guys on those other positions. And they get into the later rounds, fill those other needs later. And again, I like what they did on defense and free agency. So I could totally see them then going for running back, wide receiver, filling some of those other positions. So they're in a good position to. I mean, they weren't that far off. I mean, their record is 6-11, but that division was so bad that they were even still in it in the last quarter of the year. Secondly, like I think you mentioned, G, and you actually, big dude, they don't have a lot of spots to fill. Just fill the spots you need to fill, and you'll be right there.
Mhm.
Right.
So that's my take on Cincinnati. Let's get into the Cleveland Browns. Oh boy.
Why you
Cleveland.
say it like that, man?
Because I feel like it's just one of those franchises, G. It's just one of those franchises. And, we think about their year, the first thing that comes to mind is just the quarterback fiasco and Stefanski. and at least Stefanski's out of there. I gotta say it with angst. At least Stefanski's out of there. But if all good seasons follow a familiar script, bad ones tend to fall apart in their own uniquely chaotic ways, and no team embodies it better than the Cleveland Browns. Their season just seemed like it was over from the draft, to be quite honest with you. Once they picked Dylan Gabriel, and then they picked Shador, who we all think should have been gone, and then all the talk is about Shador. Does anybody even know what went on in the Brown season this year other than the quarterback situation and Myles Garrett
That's what I
doing
was
his
getting ready
thing
to say. Other
as
than that,
usual? Yeah, I mean, what else even happened?
There was a
And
great
what
big middle ground.
exactly? And what got lost in the shuffle? And his name escapes me right now. But they had a linebacker who was a rookie, who was rookie defensive player of the year, and his name escapes me right now. If y'all find it while I'm going my little soliloquy, let me know. But they had a rookie linebacker who was rookie defensive player of the year, Pro Bowler. So that defense is where it needs to be for the most part. But that whole Dylan Gabriel, Shador Sanders situation, it really overshadowed their entire season. To me, it made Stefanski look crazy, but
make him look dumb.
we've had our share of episodes talking about Stefanski.
But
but what followed was a season-long circus, basically, that ended with the same old story for the Browns. No playoffs. And like we said just a few minutes ago, Myles Garrett was really their big shining bright spot this year, setting the single season record for sacks. So poor Browns fans. I think it's tough being a Bills fan, but it's definitely better than being a Browns fan. So off-season storyline to watch for them. Todd Monken is now in charge. I don't know. I'm not a huge Todd Monken guy. I mean, it's better than Stefanski. But who's he going to trust to take over at QB is probably a really big question for them, because you're talking about a team that is very good defensively. Now, total defense, they ranked a little bit lower than I expected at 14th, but third against the pass. They were third in sacks. Run, they were mediocre at 16th. But sometimes I think when you have a very good defense like that and your team is always behind, that can present some challenges. And so those statistics aren't necessarily that accurate.
They were on the field too long.
Way too much. They make a great play, get the offense the ball back, and then sometimes the offense would either be 3 and out or give it right back. So it's hard to sustain, a season as long as the NFL's is, with being out there so much. You start to feel that wear and tear. Mm-hmm. So for Cleveland, again, they're middle of the road in terms of cap space, $23.3 million. They have 2 picks in the first round. Good for them at 6 and 24. So they can get some things done there, certainly. We know they need to improve on offense. certainly could always benefit from some defensive weapons here and there, but the defense is pretty solid. G, what do you think about the Browns and what they need to do in the first part of this draft?
Man, I'm actually excited for the Browns fans, but based on what I see that they've done so far in free agency, they have really shored up both sides of that line. So I think that is a very good sign for them. So what I would focus on if I were the GM and I'm in the room with all these other folks, we need true separation wide receivers. We need some people who can run a good route, who can blow past a defender if they need to, who can go up and fight for a ball. We need people that their QB can be confident will catch it. That's what they need to focus on. And they have these two picks. For me, it would be wide receiver and wide receiver, unless there's a high quality running back, because they need running back too. Unless there's a high quality running back, then one of those will go toward that. But they got a wealth of wide receivers that they can actually get. So they might go I go wide receiver if I were them, particularly with this particular class. I was getting ready to hedge and say go running back first, and then with your later one in the first round, go wide receiver. But the reality is, if they're shoring up the line the way they're shoring it up, and if you give and it's going to be Shedeur Sanders, that's why they're beefing it up like that. If you give Shedeur Sanders time, he can actually pick you apart. You don't have that higher QB rating coming out of college if you're not accurate. I think he was probably the most accurate in the draft last year, if I remember correctly.
And with a terrible offensive line in college too, G.
Took the most sacks. Most sacks, probably the most hurries, and was still that accurate. So, yeah, give him time. I think he will pick some teams apart. And I think that's where they're going. Looking at who they just picked up, they should have right tackle. They should have right guard. They should have the left guard. I'm telling you, right guard. I'm like, they're really focusing on that line. They even went out and got him another tight end, two more. No, they re-signed Whiteheart, and they're bringing in another one. So they're really focusing on protection, and these tight ends are going to be real integral to that offensive game. So they'll probably be able to block and run routes. Cleveland fans, they're going to be happy. I'm going to be happy because I'm a Shedeur fan, but Cleveland fans, I think they have something to look for next season, this coming season.
All right, big dude, what do you think about the Browns in the first round with those two picks?
I think that this is tremendous for them because they do have, as G mentioned, they do have some linemen that are there. But you do have somebody like a DeJuan Jones, who's a tackle that has only a year left on his rookie deal. So you have to take a look at, since he only has a year left in his rookie deal, how that's going to go, because he's not going to automatically come back, and we'll see what type of year he has. But where I definitely agree with G at is in the sixth pick, I think you need somebody that can stretch the field, and help make Shedeur great and help pick up Jerry Jeudy, because Jerry Jeudy is very inconsistent. Jerry Jeudy has everything together. Jerry Jeudy is scary, but the only person that makes him less scary is himself.
Exactly.
So I would say because of that, I think if Carnell Tate is there, and I have a feeling Carnell Tate's going to be there at 6, that they need to go ahead and snatch Carnell Tate.
I wouldn't be mad at that either.
Yeah, Carnell Tate at 6 and 24. I think if Caden Proctor's there, you take a look at him. But I think the tackle that might be best for them when you're talking about quickness and protecting Shedeur's blind side is Max Hihanachur. I think it's about
you really like that dude.
Yeah. I like his athleticism. And I think he's got quite an upside. Because I really think that Caden may be taken. I mean, I would rather, to be honest with you, I would rather have Caden, but I don't know if Caden is going to be there. I really don't know, because Caden is stock from what I saw. I haven't seen anything today, but he's still, nothing has happened to bring him down. And I say, beyond everything else, I think he's going to come in ready for whatever camp he goes in. So, and of course, later on, they can pick up somebody that pairs with Myles Garrett. And we'll see how everything else goes. But that's about it. And, fill in the gaps after that.
I'm in agreement with both of you in terms of the direction that Cleveland needs to go in. And I'm also optimistic, like you as well, G, for the future of this team. Again, when you have a defense as your foundation, a defense as solid as the one they have, you can improve very quickly. And offensively, they had their moments, but when you think about the fact that they pretty much played two rookie quarterbacks for most of the year, and certainly being a Shador fan like we all are, I watched them probably more than I've ever watched the Cleveland Browns. I saw some bright spots. I saw some things they could get done. Big dude, totally agree with you on Jerry Jeudy. That's one of my Bama guys, but man, Jerry Jeudy, he ain't it. He ain't it. So anyways, for me, I think with that 6th pick, Cleveland needs to go with that old line. I really wanted to do wide receiver bad for them because, boy, do they need it. But my thought is to get a wide receiver with that 24th pick. So for the 6th pick, I'm taking Francis Moigoa from Miami if he's available. And I'm thinking he should be available. If not, Spencer Fano will work. Big dude, I really like Maxi Onachor too, and his value is going up. Been a lot of chatter about him lately, so I'm interested to see. He might pop way up. Don't be surprised if he's the first lineman taken on that offensive side there. So that's really a great recommendation, big dude. But I'm thinking definitely O-line with that 6th pick, and I love Chris Brazzell, man. I think he's going to be your guy with that 24th pick. Now, my fear with Chris Brazzell at that pick is that he might be gone because he's getting a lot of buzz now.
Yeah, I don't think he'll be there.
That's my only fear, that he's getting a lot of buzz now. If he's not there, then get yourself a big wide receiver, the best big available at that point. I think that the wide receivers, just for a quick minute here, I think that wide receiver value is starting to shoot up. And I'm hearing a lot of talk about multiple wide receivers being taken earlier in this first round, which is going to be real interesting, which means that some of these interior linemen and defensive guys on the outside are going to be available for teams that maybe didn't think they'd be available. So that'll be something to keep our eyes on to see if that trend actually happens. But I'm hearing a lot of chatter about wide receivers moving up in this draft. What were you about to say, G?
I was getting ready to say, I'm thinking about Cleveland and a good portion, an outdoors team, a good portion of their play is going to be cold. Denzel Boston, Malachi Fields, one of their knocks is they're not the fastest in the world, but they know how to position themselves. They have wonderful hands, right? But that would be great in a place like in one of these northern cities that play on natural turf. That would be great for them because they're not going to overshoot. You're not going to see slippage. It's not going to become, can I use my speed here, or is it going to be limited if I hit that? You don't have to deal with a bunch of those things. I'll bet you money they won't be as injured as often because they're not as fast. So I can just see one of those other big wide receivers actually doing well in Cleveland.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, and what makes even more sense, obviously, is for them to get your boy Tate if he's there. He's Ohio, so he knows the climate. Like you said, he'll be used to the elements.
Yeah.
So we'll see. That the top of that draft is going to be real interesting, because starting to see some shifts in what people like. And the media's playing some games here with some of the value on some of these players. And as we mentioned a couple of times, I think Bain's probably getting the worst end of it, but a lot of these wide receivers are getting a lot of love this last week or so. So
It
we'll
seems
see
pretty
what
deep at
happens.
that level, man, at that position.
It is. That's why when we talked about some of these other teams that had wide receiver needs, like, you have some bigger needs, kind of hold off. There'll be a guy there for you. So we'll see. I think, like I said before we started this, I think this is a pretty deep draft. And I'm excited for all the teams that need help and are trying to come up. I think that they have a great opportunity with this draft to really make some noise and improve their teams. So um, let's wrap up the AFC North with the division champions, which seems kind of shallow to say given how they won the division.
I
The
know, right?
Pittsburgh Steelers. Um, man, a lot is going to be predicated on the Steelers, on what Aaron Rodgers decides to do, to be quite honest with you. But Pittsburgh, one of those teams that's always competitive, usually in that chase, but have kind of leveled out as a wild card team over the last several years. Haven't really gotten past that point, or I should say the wild card game, because they won the division. The wild card game, they haven't earned a first round bye or anything like that in a long time, so they haven't been at that level. But certainly the biggest story for them, Mike Tomlin. Left at the end of the season. We kind of felt that was coming. That was in the last weeks leading up to the season, and really independent of how the Steelers season ended. We thought that was inevitable. The uncertainty around Aaron Rodgers continues to hover over this franchise, as I guess he's probably off in the cave someplace in California doing what he does in the off season, right? But regardless of what comes next at QB for them, this version of the Pittsburgh Steelers certainly ran its course, right? So enter Mike McCarthy. Super exciting there, right? I'll have some vanilla ice cream, no whipped cream, no cherries, just plain. But
Come on, man.
In fairness, and I like Mike McCarthy. Don't get me wrong, I like him. I just don't think he's, especially if you look at a loaded AFC, he's not the answer. He's not going to take them to where they need to go. And as I mentioned when we talked about the coaching carousel, I think there's the next coach for them will be the one to get them to where they want to be. But anyways, we don't know what's going to happen with their quarterback, depending on what A-Rod decides. And this team, they may be stuck where it's been, given the coaching change. It's kind of similar type of coaches in some regard in terms of where their teams have been the last decade or so, just hovering around contention, but never being that team to beat and never quite being able to break through. So we'll see what happens. So Rodgers off season. Rodgers and McCarthy reuniting a la Peaches and Herb. Is it going to work, y'all? Is it going to work?
No, man, that's gonna be like Boys to Men reunion tour. It's gonna blow up.
So offensively, just dreadful. 25th total offense, 22nd in passing, 26th in rushing. Defensively, all over the place. 17th total. 29th against the pass, 13th against the run, but 6th in sacks.
How did they do as well as they did?
Look at their division. But in all reality, think about it. Lamar was hurt for a good bulk of the year. Joe Burrow missed a little bit more than half of the year, and then Cleveland. So that, we don't know what 9 games they won, but I guarantee you 5 or 6 of them was within this division. In that division, you probably only need to win half your division games and your division champ.
Well, true that.
So
that's about as bad as the NFC South.
But you're right. It's like, how did they win games? And I would watch them a lot because we unfortunately have a Steeler fan in the household with us. And yeah, they somehow find ways to win some of these games. But they made some good acquisitions themselves this offseason. So let's see what they're able to do. I love the Michael Pittman get from
Yeah,
Indianapolis.
they spent some money, bro.
Yes, they needed a receiver. I love Michael Pittman. They got Jamel Dean at cornerback. They could use some help there. They got Rico Dow, who is he's a sleeper to me in the league, but I like Rico Dow.
That hurt right there, bro.
Oh, I know it did. I know it did. And I like Jaquan Brisker, the safety from the Bears. Then they got Sebastian Joseph Day on the D line. So those are some good gets in free agency.
Yeah, he did well.
Yeah, they lost Kenneth Gainwell and Calvin Austin the third. Yeah, I love Gainwell, but to me, Gainwell's in the league are a dime a dozen. I like how he plays. I think he gives a lot of effort, but you can replace that. So looking at them, they're ranked 10th in cap space. So this entire division is not bad, has not been bad in terms of their cap space. But the Steelers are 10th with $30.3 million available. They need, well, one of their biggest needs was wide receiver, which I like Michael Pittman filling that, but it never hurts to have another because you still have
got to
DK
have
Metcalf.
a true two.
Exactly. And you still have DK Metcalf. If he can stay out of the sideline stuff, he'd be good to go. You got a cornerback. Need a cornerback. You need an edge, linebacker, offensive line, and you have the 21st pick. Now, think about the Steelers season. Yeah, they're a division champ, but do they seem like they should be picking that low? They seem like they should have a top 10 pick or something, but they're picking at 21. Big dude, what do you have the Pittsburgh Steelers doing, as they say in Central PA?
I really think as much as they could benefit from a wideout and that pick that they have, the 21st pick, I really think that they need to go back against. I mean, their division does have good edge rushers. I mean, now they're going against Henderson with the Ravens, which could give them some more stuff. And you still got Roquan Smith, even though he doesn't have much longer to play, he still plays at a high level. So you're going against people like that on the edge. So I think we're back to the offensive tackle thing again at 21, with Caden Proctor, if he's there, or Maxie Honichur. I think that they need to get somebody that was established. One thing about the Steelers over the time, they seem to always develop somebody, and they seem to always make a project out of someone, made them into a tackle. That's what they were able to do. But I think in this situation, you're going to have more people that are more pro-ready at that tackle. They need a pro-ready person in that first room to work on that. I know last year they had a few problems with there also. Of course, a big loss to them to the Cardinals was Isaac Seumalo. That was a really big loss. So they've got to come back, and I know they've gotten some other people through free agency. Their guy Broderick Jones, even at left tackle, they don't know if he's going to be ready by the first game. I think if you don't know that your left tackle is going to be ready by the first game, you have to go offensive tackle at 21. And of course, fill in the gaps where they may be. I like the Steelers, secondary. It looks like the state of the team in other places is really good. Their wide receivers are good, and I think that even though you have the Dwaddle, the other running back, I think this is another situation where you look at Nick Singleton or you look at Katron Allen as hard runners for the Steelers. That's what they've always had. And I don't know if that's the way McCarthy's going to play it, though. But if there's any semblance of what they used to do before, I think you need to look at it. And there's other backs also, but there's not a whole lot of backs somewhere in there. But if we're sticking mainly with the first round, I think if Caden Proctor is there, take him. If not, Honichur once again.
I'm thinking they need to shore up their quarterback. But honestly, I would wait to 2027. So I would just bring back my vet. I know they're negotiating, try to figure it out, but I would try to bring back my vet and wait to 2027 for a better crop of QBs if I'm going to actually go that route. So then at this particular point, 21 is best available. So what is the best available wide receiver or offensive lineman? And then that's who they should take. Because I think they did a good job at cornerback, at safety, and free agency. Yeah, and they did do some defensive pieces in free agency. So I would go to the offensive side of the ball.
For Pittsburgh, I really was thinking that they should go wide receiver with this first pick, but I just have this sickening feeling for Steelers fans that Michael Pittman was their answer to that. And it's not saying it in a disparaging way about him, but I think that they've checked that off their list, that they got him in free agency. And I didn't plan this, guys. Do not think that I planned this. I think they're going to pick Ty Simpson with their pick.
You think they'll go QB?
I think they're going to go QB and
Wow.
not wait until next year.
So Will Howard's not enough?
I forgot Will Howard existed. And I've heard good things about him, actually. I've heard that, he was doing well, learning, and that he had some tools or whatever. But I feel like people are starting to buy into this imagined hype with Ty Simpson. And, you guys know where I stand on that.
Seeing more comments about him.
And honestly, I know the Jets have 2 picks before them. If the Jets don't take him at 16, which is a strong possibility, I think the Steelers are going to take him because he's going to get drafted in the first round. I just think that he's going to come in that lower part of it. I don't think the Jets are that crazy. And don't be surprised. I know we're not talking about them. Don't be surprised if the Rams take Ty Simpson. But I think Pittsburgh is going to take him. And then, like I said, they've done a good job with their free agency pickup so far. And then they'll fill their other needs in the latter rounds of the draft. And I don't have a whole lot to say about that, but I'm going to be objective for once. We mentioned in the last couple of times we talked about Ty Simpson's that he certainly has all of the tools to be able to play in this league, but there's just some things that he seems to be missing to me. And I've been hearing a lot lately about, Kalen DeBoer has this pro-style offense, and, Mendoza didn't play in that type of offense, and none of these other quarterbacks played in these NFL-style offenses. And I'm thinking, okay, let's take that as an advantage, okay? What did you two see when Ty Simpson was playing an NFL-style offense against college defenses that don't have Myles Garrett and my man Anderson from the Texans, and let's just keep naming all of these defensive guys that are not going to be Mississippi State defense, Auburn's defense, Tennessee's defense, and Ty Simpson couldn't do anything. And I heard him say that he's the type of quarterback that leaves a program better than how he found it. Now, you tell me how he left Alabama better than Jalen Milroe had left it. Don't feel like we're at that. We played in a national championship game when Jalen Milroe was there.
Yeah.
I think they'll go after Carson Beck, not him, though.
You know what's funny about that, G? I have not heard Carson Beck's name.
Yeah, it's been pretty quiet the last couple of weeks.
It's kind of odd. I mean, he's a big 6'5", 230 QB night.
And you know how I feel about Beck too. You know how I feel about Beck, but he got my respect in the playoffs. And if somebody said you have to take a quarterback in the first round after Mendoza, I would take Beck.
Because I think his is more of a mental issue, bad decision making. That's really what his issue is. So he has to get his game pattern recognition, and got to get that in gear. So he's not
Exactly.
making dumb mistakes because the dude got the physical tools. I mean,
Yep.
he got the
Yep.
size, he got the height. He's a heavy, so he can take those. He'll be able to take those hits. It
For
would be
me,
a
Ty.
no-brainer for me.
For me, Ty Simpson panics too much, and that panic cost Alabama at least 2 or 3 games this year. Just
Mm.
Yeah.
sure, just sheer panic.
Mhm. Yeah, you can see that. I mean, he's anything but steady. That's been his problem. And a lot of the things that were going on, they weren't that difficult. I mean, he was going to be challenged, of course, but he just never seemed too sure of himself.
Yeah. And the one thing I will say in his defense, it's the one thing that I will say in his defense. Alabama had a non-existent running game this year. And I will say that that's probably the worst disadvantage he had as an Alabama quarterback in just sort of far back as I can remember. Never had a running game that bad.
Mm.
And the defense wasn't one of the better defenses that we've had. So if I'm going to say anything, he didn't have a lot going well around him. But when you profess to be this truth of sorts, what does it matter? What does it matter? If you're that man, you're gonna find a way. So that's my thing on Ty Simpson. Yeah, I think Pittsburgh's gonna do that, be the biggest mistake that they've probably ever made. And that is not a city that he wants to be put in that position and fail. Trust me. Not with their
Sheesh.
storied franchise. He does not want to hear from Steeler fans.
Hey,
Mm-mm.
what do y'all think about this QB from what is it, North Dakota State?
I like him. I do. I like him. I'm a little bit afraid because of previous quarterback history from North Dakota State. But yeah, he looks. I actually thought watching them one game that this might be the North Dakota State quarterback that makes it.
Hmm. Yeah, I kind of think that he might be too. I honestly do. But you're taking a chance. FCS, if I remember, that's what they're in. So
Mhm.
you're taking a chance. But I don't know. He definitely looks the part. Now, poor Diego Pavia, man, that dude's going in with a chip on his shoulder. So I do wish him the best, and I'm hoping that he can write a check that is butt and cash.
So this Cole Payton kid from North Dakota State is
Mm,
6'3", 233.
Mm.
mm.
And they describe him as a Taysom Hill
Yeah,
like
it sounds like
person.
it.
So I could get with that.
Mm.
Yeah.
I could definitely get with that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think Diego is gonna drop to like third, fourth round.
Are we sure that Fernando Mendoza is going to be the first pick? Are we positive?
I'm not.
That's why I ask.
I think I am. I mean, if you think about it, the Raiders, there's really no advantage of going any other way. I mean, what is it that is going to help the Raiders? I mean, they don't, everybody in the early rounds, there's the best player available. Like I said, everybody keeps saying that Caleb Downs is the best player, but everybody is, if you're drafting for potential, you almost have to go with them, because if they're drafting for potential and they go with somebody else, who is it that's going to give the Raiders a shot in the arm other than him? Not that he's necessarily going to do it for sure. I'm not so sure what other direction they would go in would be the change in the franchise. It's almost like that. That's what you have to go for to find out if he's the franchise guy or not. I mean, I don't know if it will be like Jones that was with the Giants. He was supposed to be all this other stuff, and it didn't work. So I think I'm not sure what other way the Raiders would go. I mean, the Raiders have players. They got a good coach. They got a good offensive guy. I would say with the coach they have, it's the best shot that they have. With
I'll
their
throw
head coach.
something. I'll throw something crazy out there at you. I've been trying to visualize some of these guys in some of these spots. I can't visualize Fernando Mendoza in a Raiders uniform.
Oh yeah.
But you know who I can visualize in a Raiders uniform, and it will
Who's that?
be like the Baker Mayfield shock.
I know you was getting ready to say
Who am I gonna say?
Diego.
No, Carson Beck.
Oh,
You know what? I can see him in the Raiders uniform.
actually, huh?
Yeah.
I could see him there.
Mm-hmm.
Not in first round though.
I wouldn't take him as the first pick, but I'm just saying, Baker after seeing Baker Mayfield get drafted where he did,
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
anything's possible.
Yeah. Yeah. He has upside.
I don't think I've ever heard. I've watched a lot of drafts in public, and I don't think I've ever heard a collective sigh like we heard at Kilt when they drafted Baker Mayfield.
Bruh, that was funny.
I mean, I'm talking about fans with all types of jerseys on, laughing, slapping each other on the shoulder, shocked faces.
That
It
was
crazy.
funny.
It was crazy.
But you know, Vegas, they go very early in the second round, like 36.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know, man.
I don't know. But before we get off, I glazed right over a piece of news. I apologize for skipping. The NFL owners approved some big rules changes today. And one of the big ones that we had talked about earlier that was on the books for them is the replay command center in New York can now correct the clear and obvious missed calls in real time. We know that they were talking about it. Well, that was approved today by the owners. And what it includes is they can place flags on the field for potential disqualifications, even if the on the field official didn't throw a flag. So they can call down and they can deal with DQs. Additionally, there's a temporary rule that's being adopted because there may be a workplace stoppage in officiating this year. So what they're going to allow the replay officials to do is intervene on officiating errors. And to them, this is going to serve as a safeguard if they have basically those scab referees in there that they anticipate making mistakes. This is going to almost be like a quality control safeguard in the face of having substitute officials officiating games.
Wow.
Oh, good old NFL, boy.
Wow. So what is that
They keep
saying
it
about their faith in the referees?
Exactly. If you're telling me that you need to be up in the booth reviewing any officials' calls, then you either need better refs or maybe you need more refs.
Something. And that's actually not a bad idea. More refs.
Well, Big Dude had brought up the positioning of some of these guys and why they're missing calls, and maybe there needs to be another set. Remember, Big Dude, you brought it up when we were talking about the Super Bowl predictions. Maybe there needs to be some more officials out there.
Yeah.
That's not a bad idea, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think about it, the speed of the NFL has dramatically increased. Why wouldn't you expand the number of eyes out there so you can keep an eye on what's going on? Because we know when we watch games at home, we see a penalty on every play. Now, certainly within the culture of the game, there's certain things you're not going to call holding every play because there's holding on every play. But, there's a lot of other more egregious penalties that are missed because refs are out of position. And, you do have to stay out of the way of the players, but you can put some officials on the backside on both sides of the ball. So, anyways, what do we know?
Nothing.
We're just some aspiring podcasters.
I'm glad I'm not a white hat.
Say that you're glad you're not a white hat?
Yes.
Yeah, I had thought about doing it at one point, but I'm like, man, these parents be wilding, man. I'm good.
Get it. Nope.
All right. Well, thank you all for joining us on another episode of Chasing Rings. We will, you're going to lead us on this because you will be ready. We are going to AFC South on the next episode. So until next time, see ya later.